Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Today's November 14th, 2024. It is now 5 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. We have a confirmation on a quorum. We do have a quorum. At this time, I'd like everyone to stand for a pledge of allegiance to the United States flag and to our Texas flag. And then we'll At this time, let's all recognize a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Workshop or public hearings, we don't have any activity, Mark, in that category?
None tonight.
All right, public comments. We need public comments.
No public comments.
Okay, workshops, none. Public comments,
Can-
none. I'm just doing
Can I make one quick request?
We have a request from Dr. Holman. Welcome, Dr. Holman. I'm sorry I didn't.
Howdy, y'all. Greetings from the cold. I understand that we have an engineer that was nominated for an award recently, a Luna Award, and I think it might be nice to recognize her.
Okay, is this during the presentations, or should we recognize that individual at this time? Mark, do you know anything about this?
I don't, but we can do it during the manager's.
Okay, Dr. Holman,
Okay.
we'll recognize that individual during the manager's report.
Sounds good.
Okay, we're going to go on to letter F of the agenda, which is consent agenda items. We do have 6 consent items. This is the time if any board members have any questions or concerns or want to pull any items. It's time to discuss, to reflect. Okay,
Motion to approve?
we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items by Mr. Martinez. We have a second.
A second.
A second by Dr. Somota. All those in favor to approve the consent agenda items, vote yea.
Yay.
All those against, nay. This item passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to go on to letter G, items for individual consideration. We have the general manager's report. Mark, you want to give us a briefing on that, please?
So, good evening, Ms. Gilbert is not available this evening. So a couple items on your board agenda. So the first is that there is going to be a request for the Mayor and City Commission has made a request for a joint session with the BPUB Board of Directors for Tuesday, November 19th from 11:30 to 1 p.m. at City Hall. Lunch will be provided, and we do have a draft agenda from the city attorney, so we'll be posting that as a meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
Next, on November 20th is the regular scheduled PubCat meeting, and then BPUB offices will be closed on the 28th and 29th of November in recognition of Thanksgiving holiday. Our SRWA board meeting, our next meeting is on December 2nd. Then our finance committee will meet on December 4th, and our next board meeting then is on December 9th right now. A couple updates is on November 7th, the International Boundary and Water Commission signed Minute 331 in Ciudad Juarez. And what 331 does, it establishes 2 binational working groups the Rio Grande Projects Working Group and the Rio Grande Environmental Working Group. The groups will advise the IBWC on conservation and new water sources and address environmental issues. But perhaps the biggest news is it provides additional tools for Mexico to meet its obligations to provide water under the 1944 Water Treaty. So it includes transferring of Mexican inventories of water that are held in the reservoirs, Falcon and Amistad, and using waters from the San Juan and Alamo rivers, typically dedicated for Mexico's use against their obligation. And of note is the San Juan and Alamo rivers, they flow into the Rio Grande south of the reservoirs. So those waters cannot be impounded and stored for later use like the other waters we normally get. So as a result, Minute 331 allows only credit when the water can be put to beneficial use for the United States. And so water that would spill into the Gulf does not account against that debt. These measures were seen as exceptional measures by the IBWC and temporary, and they expire in 5 years unless they're extended by the IBWC with a separate minute. So we'll get more information to you later. We can make more information available on the written form that was released. But for the most part, that is good news for us. It will allow us to draw water from the river against the water coming off the San Juan and Alamo rivers. Then at the September 9th meeting, the board directed the general manager to discuss and work with the city on a plan of action regarding the future of Resaca operations and the Resaca fee, and to report back to the board. Since then, we've compiled an extensive amount of documentation. We've made that available to city staff members. We've also prepared discussion materials and maps and proposed next steps. And we'll be presenting at a joint meeting with city staff tomorrow, November 15th at 3 p.m. And we'll update the board on the plan of action at the December 9th meeting. I also believe that is a subject of discussion at the joint meeting on the 19th as well. So that is the conclusion of the general manager's minutes. Recognition of our superb engineer is Marie Leal.
Okay.
Our Director of Water and Wastewater Engineering and Capital Projects.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I was humbly nominated to be a nominee for the Luna Awards, which are, it's a new celebration here in the Valley. It's celebrated in all the larger cities in Texas, but it celebrates women in construction, architecture, and engineering industries. And I was nominated for Women of the Year. And there was quite a bit of nominations. I did not win, but it was great. I was pleased to be nominated for it. They hope to, it was the first annual, and it was a celebration, a banquet in the McAllen area. And they do select 8 ambassadors. And I'm one of the 8 ambassadors to be ongoing to represent women in those 3 industries here in the Valley. So hopefully next year will be the 2nd annual and so forth.
Dr. Holman, would you like to make any comments or?
Just like to say, Marie, I mean, keep on kicking butt, I guess. Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
And Marie, just on behalf of the board, of course, any the board members can make the comments if they wish. This is certainly welcoming news. We're very proud of the work that you are doing and your representation of this utility. And we wish you perhaps another nomination next year. Any comments? And a win.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you and congrats.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark, you completed your portion?
Yes, we can move on.
Okay, we'll go to, we did not pull any items out from consideration, so we'll move to staff reports and presentations to the board. The first one will be the financial report by Mr. Pettis.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So my name is Mike Perez. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be presenting the financial performance report as of September 30, 2024. This is our year-end number. So here we've got the executive summary that focuses on 7 categories. Each of the categories has its own gauge meter, red representing poor, yellow average, and green good. Starting out with the flow of funds, BPUB did generate $18.8 million year to date. That was to replenish the improvement fund. Our debt service coverage came in at 2.85 times, way above the 1.25 times minimum requirement. Our fuel purchase and energy charge was set at 5.019 cents per 1,000 kWh for the month of September. It represented a 20% drop from the previous month, and it did generate an over-recovery of $16.68 million. That'll help offset some future market uncertainty. On the COB cash transfer, it was higher by $1.9 million from budget due to an increase in adjusted gross revenues. We saw personal expenses that are pretty much in line with budget. Other than the non-personal expenses did come in about $6.3 million below budget, and some of it is due to timing issues, and others is just budget savings. Our BPUB average bill was lower than the average MOU bill and the average IOU bill for 1,000 kWh user. That average bill for PUB was at $111.26. Our CISP spending was at $36.2 million for the year, which represented 39.5% of the fiscal year 24 approved plan. So we will pour in this area, and we'll discuss this in a future slide. And we met all key financial metrics. Here we have the condensed statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. This is in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. This is the same statement that we see on our annual comprehensive financial report. We are comparing our year-to-date actuals to prior year's actuals, same period. So starting out with line 1, operating revenues year-to-date were $236,034,000. These were $39.6 million below last year's levels. Now, we did see an increase in the base revenues of $3.7 million, and then we did see some decreases of $24.6 million in fuel revenues, and these are direct offset by the fuel expenses that are passed through to the customers. We saw another decrease of $10.6 million in the off-system energy sales as compared to last year. And then, of course, we did use $9.5 million of the rate stabilization fund to fund the customers' production costs for the months of November and December last year, as approved by the board. Moving on, line 2, operating expenses were $202,699,000. These were $20 million below last year's levels. The major changes in this category included a decrease in the power purchased and fuel, like mentioned earlier, at $24.6 million. We did see an increase in personnel cost of $5.8 million, and this was due to the implementation of the compensation study. We saw an increase in depreciation expense of $900,000 and a decrease in repairs and maintenance of $1.7 million. So we arrive at line 3, operating income of $33,335,000. Once we back out the non-operating expenses of $14,960,000, we end up with income before capital contributions of $18,374,000. As noted before, the big difference or the big drop between the non-operating expenses from last year to this year represents the Tenaska Equity Fund distribution that was issued back in May of 2023. We add in line 6, capital contributions, $9,938,000, and we end up with an increase in net position of $28,313,000 year to date. Adding this to the net position at the beginning of the fiscal year, we end up with a net position at the end of the period of $480,922,000. And so here we've got now the condensed statement, condensed summary of revenues and expenses. This is based on the flow of funds in accordance with the bond ordinance. We are comparing year-to-date actuals to year-to-date budget. So operating revenues were $235,878,000. These were $2.2 million below budget. And here again, this line item represents both the base rates and fuel rate revenue. And so we did see an increase in the base rates of 11.9 million over budget, while the fuel and out systems sales decreased by $14 million. Other revenues were $26,561,000. They came in $5 million above the budget. The majority of this represented some additional ancillary services that were generated in the ERCOT market and some additional interest earnings of approximately $2.4 million over budget. So we end up with line 3 gross revenues of $262,439,000. Once we back out the fuel and SRWA contributions of $85,591,000, we end up with adjusted gross revenues of $176,848,000. This represents, or this is the number that is used for the 10% City of Brownsville transfer calculation. So the city is entitled to $17.7 million of this adjusted gross revenues. Once we back out other requirements in O&M, non-operating debt service of $124,235,000, and also backing out the COB usage of $6.1 million, we end up with a balance available after requirements of $46,523,000. Backing out the transfer to the city net of the usage of $11,595,000, we end up with a balance available for transfers out or for PUB uses of $34,927,000. That money was used to fund our CIP budget of $16,090,000, leaving a balance of $18,837,000 that flows to replenish our improvement fund. Here we've got a budget to actual comparison of our personal O&M expenses. For fiscal year, year-to-date 2024, we saw about a $220,000 increase in actuals over budget. Moving on, here we have our budget to actual comparison for the non-personal O&M expenses of current year and the past 5 years. This is where we did see our actual expenses about $6.3 million under budget. As far as the City of Brownsville transfers, as mentioned earlier, we did see a $1.9 million increase over budget going to the city. Here we have the average electric bill and fuel and purchased energy charge. As mentioned earlier, the fuel rate for September was set at 5.019 cents per 1,000 kWh, giving us an average utility bill for the residential user of $111.26. And it did generate an over recovery of $16.68 million year to date. Here we have the fiscal year or the CIP. The fiscal year approved plan for 24 was $91,717,000. Year-to-date expenditures were $36,228,000, representing 39.5% of the total approved plan. Here on the top, we do see that the majority of the expenditures came in customer connections, the Hidalgo Energy Center, and on routine activities for troubled calls. On the bottom, we do see a capital spending 5-year history. We see that the highest spend in the past 5 years was in 2019 at 46.7%. Now, as during last month's Finance Committee meeting, Mr. David Ramirez, the Maintenance and Reliability Engineering Manager, provided a presentation on capital improvement plan delivery initiatives to improve project performance. Mr. Ramirez will be scheduling weekly CIP meetings with each department division to identify CIP project managers to discuss project schedules, identify key project delivery milestones, and identify project performance metrics. Staff will also be implementing the eBuilder Enterprise project management software to better track project performance. So we do anticipate a better outcome on for our fiscal year 25 CIP. Here we have the key financial metrics. As far as the debt service coverage ratio, we did come in at 2.85 times, above the 1.25 times requirement. Total outstanding debt is at $254 million with an annual debt service of $28.9 million. Our debt to capitalization ratio is it's at around the municipal utility median. Our days cash on hand was at 457 days total cash, compared to the industry standard of 180 days. Our bond ratings or Moody's were A2, outlook stable, and Fitch and S&P at A- with an outlook stable. Now, just recently, both S&P Global Ratings and Fitch Ratings completed their annual surveillance of BPUB's bond ratings and issued their reports. S&P affirmed BPUB's A- with outlook stable, and Fitch affirmed BPUB's A- rating, but they did raise the outlook from stable to positive. What this means is the change in outlook reflects BPUB's solid financial profile and Fitch's improved view of the operating risk profile for all utilities participating in the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. BPUB sustained outperformance of its budget, driven by further improvement in operating income, will likely result in a possible rating action, and those are the words that coming off of the report. So, that was very good good information. So, on the reserves, they are fully funded. I will say though that on the capital improvement reserve, the minimum requirement is $15 million. The amount reflected on here was based on the first financial statement run, and it didn't include some adjustments at year end. We since then have recorded a market adjustment to correct the adjusted balance to $15,992 as of September 30, 2024. So we are in compliance. And here we've got the customer receivable metrics. Total accounts receivable at year end was at $17,196,000. The majority of this, or 98%, represents balances within 30 days. The fiscal year 24 utility assistance year to date was at $1,925,000, and our average customer receivable collection period is for 2024 is hovering around 20 days, just right under 20 days. That concludes the financial presentation. There's a lot of other additional information that's attached to the report for your review. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for that information, Mike. Any comments or questions from board members?
Thank you.
I have a quick one on the transfer. You said it was 17.7 million, and then we actually transferred 16. That was because of usage.
On the so you mean the CD transfer?
Yes.
Let me go back. Okay. So the total transfer, the 10% transfer, this is both usage and cash, was at 17.68. This was 1.93 million above budget, but it did end up being about 430,000 below prior year's level. And the big difference between this year and last year was that for the months of September 2023, we recognized a total of about $12.5 million in off-system energy sales, compared to $2 million in September of 2024. And so that's what, up throughout the entire year, we were reporting that the actual transfer was above budget and prior year's levels, but we ended up just slightly below because of that one.
I think it was a slide before this one. Well, another one with another one. Maybe, no. One more. Yeah, this one, I think here on adjusted gross revenues is $176 million, right? That's the 10%. And then actual transfers was 16.
No, the actual cash transfer was 11 million, or I'm sorry, $6.1 million. No, I'm sorry, 11,595,000. The transfer to the CB. That's the actual cash transfer. The usage was 6.1, so the combined total is the 17.6
okay.
8 million.
Yeah, the other quick question just on the CIP performance. We're expecting that to improve next year, obviously. But does this year's performance impact next year? Meaning, since we have a backlog of projects, is next year's percent spend going to be impacted because we're still working on?
No, we
24
pretty much
projects
did
versus
account for
25?
the projects that carried over into the new fiscal year, 25.
So it's
it
a
shouldn't
new
really have
slate
that much
we're-
of an impact.
Okay. That was it.
All right.
Anything from Mr. Nahad and Mr. Vidal? Mike, just one question. On the software that I know that you guys are implementing for the CIP, is that software here, is it implemented? Are y'all training on it? Or?
So, it has not yet been, it's an online,
It's an
in the cloud system. We have not started using it yet. We were working with the integrator. We expect probably to sign the contract in the next two to 3 weeks, I would say.
Okay.
Um,
And Mark, going back to your presentation on that water that might be released from, based on this treaty from 1944, what is, do you have any idea of when there might be some transfer of some actual water?
I don't, but I can certainly get back with all of you and follow up on more information. Like I said, this was just recently signed, and so I think the logistics of getting that water down here are still being worked on.
Yeah, I've had some messages and people are reading about this topic in the newspaper. And they want to know when we're getting the water. I said, oh, it'll be here next week.
Right.
Of course, I'm kidding. It is developing. The release of that water is going to take some time.
That's correct. After it's released, it'll take several days to get here. And like I said, we can impound some amount of water within our reservoirs and Zaca de la Guerra. But once that water's been released, if we don't capture it, then it flows to the Gulf. And so it has to have some coordination there.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mike, that's complete your financial report?
Yes, sir.
All right, next we have the quarterly investment report.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. My name is Jorge Santillan, Finance Manager. And I'm going to go over the investment report for the quarter ended September 30, 2024. This report complies with the Public Funds Investment Act, and all investments transactions made during this quarter were in full compliance with the Act and the PUB investment policy. Looking at this table, we're going to look at the first column A, the investment by asset class, and then market value on column C, and then the percentage of portfolio, column E, and then yield to maturity on column F. Beginning with the bank deposits, Wells Fargo, the market value is $7,123,176, percentage of portfolio 3.22, the yield to maturity 3.28. Next, we have the certificate of deposits with a market value of $10,112,000, percentage of portfolio 4.58, the yield to maturity 5.43. Then we have the investment pools with a market value of $156,637,447, with a percentage of portfolio of 70.87 and the yield to maturity of 5.04. Then we have the U.S. Treasury notes and bills with a market value of $47,284,204, percentage of portfolio 21.33, yield to maturity 4.94. The total market value, column C, $221,156,827. The total yield to maturity, 4.98. That's 31 basis points below the previous quarter, which ended at 5.29%. That's a 31 basis points difference. And that decrease is mainly attributed to the Fed fund rate cut done towards the end of the quarter. Here we have the line graph which compares BPUB's net yield compared to the S&P Pool Index and the 91-day T-bill, which is our benchmark. At the end of the quarter, BPUB ended with a yield of 4.98%. That's represented by the blue line. That's BPUB ended 2 basis points below the S&P Pool Index and 1 basis point below the 91-day T-bill. Here we have the detail by asset class, and looking at lines 1, 2, and 3 on column A, the bank deposits, the total market value on column H, $7,123,176, and the yield to maturity of 1.65 and 4.67. That's on the last column, column I. Then we have certificates of deposits shown from line 4 all the way to line 47. The total market value, $10,112,000, with a yield to maturity ranging from 5% to 5.77%. Then we have the investment pools. with a total market value of 156,637,447, with a yield to maturity ranging from 4.78% to 5.51%. Then we have the U.S. Treasury notes and bills, lines 62 through 67, with a market value of 47,284,204, with a yield to maturity from 4.47% to 5.16%. Total market value, 221,156,827, with a yield to maturity of 4.98. And this is the end of the presentation. The rest of the information is supplemental information. Any questions?
Thank you for the information. Any questions or comments from the board on this topic? Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on from the quarterly investment report to payments made to the city of Brownsville for past 7 years. Mike, is this just a report depicting?
Yeah, this is just, it stemmed from last month's presentation that we made on the city's open invoices.
Okay.
We were asked, for particularly, in particular by Mr. Martinez, whether what our process was for paying city of Brownsville invoices. And so that's the reason that we were bringing this presentation to you, before you.
Okay.
I'll be quick. But before I start, I do want to mention, on last month's presentation, I did present that we had an outstanding balance of $256,427 from the city. On October 28th, the city did pay invoices totaling $228,984.87. This represented the invoices for the lit pole attachment application review cost. And so this left an outstanding balance from the October invoices of $27,432.73, which represents three work orders. And the city has claimed that payment for this remaining work order is pending finalization of the memorandum of understanding for shared services. So that'll be forthcoming. So again, the City of Brownsville invoices, PUB, for a variety of activities and events. Invoices are promptly processed for payment as part of our normal accounts payable process. These payments fall into a variety of categories, including the following. We got the city street project utility improvements. This is not a payment to the city for their services, but an actual reimbursement of utility relocations on their street projects, right? And then we've got the Brownsville Employee Credit Union. We currently do have a memorandum of understanding that created a partnership between us and the credit union, whereas PUB is contributing 1/3 of the general manager's salary. The city puts in another 1/3, and then the credit union covers the other 1/3. We have, since then, staff looking into this and to see if maybe the credit union is now financially viable, that they no longer need our contribution of the 1/3, right? And so we'll keep you all posted on that.
Mike, sorry,
yes.
I had a question. So for the city street project utility improvements, you were saying that it's not really a charge, but
It's
what?
not a service that the city is providing for us. They contract, they issue an RFP for street projects, and they include a utility relocation portion of that. And so we are required to pay for that utility improvement. So we make the payment to the city makes the payment to the contractor.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. So one of the other things here, we do have landfill fees. We do have a memorandum of understanding for the water treatment sludge that we went into back in 2010 at $15 per ton, and it expires in September of 2030. We also deliver, starting in August of 2023, BPUB started taking the wastewater treatment sludge to the landfill. The city categorizes this sludge as a special waste, and they're charging us $36 per ton. We currently don't have an MOU for that.
And sorry to interrupt you again. I must have missed this, but what is the purpose of this presentation?
Again, just following up on the question that Mr. Martinez had regarding the process on the payments that we're making to the city.
So you we're wondering about just any money that is paid to the city for any reason whatsoever. Is that what it was?
Yeah, in general, I think what the item last month was on the payment agreement that we have with the city, and I was just saying that we should also reciprocate that. And I think what you're showing here is just what we pay and that we pay on time.
Correct.
Okay,
If you
so,
want me to, I could just skip to the last slide.
so event sponsorships, I mean, that's something that, like, it's optional for us to do,
Correct.
right? Okay, so this is,
All I'm reflecting here is it's every single payment that we make to the city by category. That's all
Mike,
it is.
An example of event sponsorship?
We can look here at the detail. These Brownsville Police Department golf tournament, Hurricane Awareness Fair, Cyclobia, and so forth. And so this just details the 7-year history of all the payments to the city. In detail, we can see that for fiscal year 24, we paid $4,085,778 to the city. The majority of that was for the utility adjustments. The second highest was the landfill charges at $677,000, and then the street repairs or patching it at $528,000. This was just informational. So,
okay.
any particular questions? If not,
No,
that'll conclude my presentation.
I think it's important to understand what our relationship is with the city, and this 7-year history is good. And I remember Mr. Martinez asking about this, and maybe even before the last meeting. But it's always good to know and to be transparent, and it's pretty straightforward. Anything else, Dr. Zamora?
So, and I think the question was when we have like an outstanding, charge, we pay it right away, right? Is that?
Right, yeah.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
From our side to them, and I think here they're just showing us all the different categories of payments that we give the city.
Okay, and so just looking at this real quick, so there seems to be a pretty big difference between 2024, right, and the previous years. And you said that one was due to,
And the majority of that, if we look here at the summary, 2.8 million was on the project utility improvements. So there was a lot of activity, a lot of street projects that the city underwent or undertook during fiscal year 24.
but those
That's
are,
what that's
that's
used.
payment for our own lines.
Our share of the utility, utility adjustments on those street projects. And again, it's going directly to a contractor. To the city then
And again,
reimburses the
Mike,
contractor.
when you talk about a contractor doing work for the city and then PUB having to make a contribution to pay for that, it's a number of projects.
Yes, yes. Like, for example, last month, you all saw a board item for the Business 77
Right.
street project, right? 5 million of that project represents utility improvements or adjustments that PUB pays.
So that $5 million.
The contractor was hired by the city. The $5 million is our share. They'll pay the contractor for the full project and then request a reimbursement from us for that $5 million.
Our contribution is $5 million.
Correct, on that particular project.
Okay, and in like 2018, 2019, 2020, like the city just wasn't doing many improvements on streets? Is that why that was pretty low?
Yes? I mean,
Okay.
Obviously, they had less major projects. Anything else, Mr. Nahara? Oh, you guys want to keep this going? All right.
We're good, thank you.
No, thank you, Mike. We know this is for information, and it is good information. That's the information the past 7 years, payments made to the city. We'll move on to the status update of Brownsville PUB's other post-employment benefits. Mike, you have this one?
yes. So this one, again, is informational purpose too. This is one stems from a change that we made earlier in February of 2024. At the time, the board had directed us to come back and provide an update 6 months later, and so this is a 6-month update. I will provide a quick background. We'll reflect back on last year's actuarial report, or performance of the fund, and then we'll look at the performance this year, current year, 24, and then talk a little bit about the plan distributions. So a little bit about the background. Again, PUB offers a post-retirement healthcare benefits for eligible retiring employees, and to qualify, retiring individuals have to meet one of 3 criteria: at least age 60 with 10 years of consecutive years of active service, age 55 with 25 consecutive years of active service, or at any age after completing 30 consecutive years of active service. Governmental Accounting Standards Board number 75 requires that a full liability of this other post-employment benefit, or OPEB, be recognized in the balance sheet. It also requires a full actuarial valuation of the plan every 2 years, and it does allow the entities to set up a special trust for future payments of the OPEB. Prior to the trust, we were paying for all these benefits or claims on the retirees on a pay-as-you-go basis. We were contributing about $550,000 to the self-funded health insurance plan for the premiums on the health on the employees, and then the plan would pay the claims cost. Back then, we were actively setting aside approximately $1 million per year to cover the future OPEB liability, and we accumulated about $13.3 million in that special fund. Back in 2022, we started exploring the idea of establishing a trust for BPUB's OPEB. RFPs were issued, and on November 2022, the board did approve the selection of the Public Agency Retirement Services, PARS, as a trust administrator for the OPEB trust, utilizing Vanguard Investments as the investment advisor. That was the option back then. And the initial contribution of that $13.3 million was made in May of 2023. In January of 2024, BPUB staff was notified that Mercer's Investments had entered into an agreement to acquire Vanguard. Mercer was not maintaining a governmental plan presence, so we needed to find an alternate investment advisor by April 1 of 2024. There wasn't enough time to go out for an RFP, and so for a new investment manager. So PARS collaborated with U.S. Bank, the custodian holding the assets, and their wholly owned subsidiary, PFM Asset Management, to provide an investment solution designed to maintain the same type of investment advisory services as Vanguard. The board approved the transition to PFM on February 12, 2024. So here we've got last year's actuarial report. Total liabilities at the end of last year were $12,591,000. Total funds in the or total fair market value in the plan and in the fund was at $13,194,000. So we were overfunded at 104.79%. We ended up with an asset of $602,950 on the account. Fast forward 1 year to 9/30/2024, our balance now is at $15,942,786. The year-to-date earnings for fiscal year 24 were $3.1 million, representing a 23.57% return for the year. The plan did pay out $43,621 in plan fees and $294,000 in distributions to cover retiree claims for the first 3 quarters. This is just a dashboard of the value in the plan, the gains, the percentage returns, and the monthly fees for the 12 months. At the initiation of the trust, or when we set up the trust, we had the option of choosing one of 4 strategies for asset allocations. PUB selected the balanced strategy that had an asset allocation of 60% equity, 40% fixed income, with a primary goal to provide a moderate amount of current income with moderate capital growth. This is a similar strategy that's used by Texas Municipal Retirement System. As mentioned, we were, before the trust, we were on a pay-as-you-go basis. Now that the plan or the trust has been set up, the plan can start paying distribution or claims on those retirees, right? So starting in fiscal year 2024, we started submitting those claims for reimbursement. For the first 3 quarters ending June, we were reimbursed $294,000. By we, I mean the health insurance fund. And then for the last quarter, we just recently submitted reimbursement for $316,326 for total retiree health cost for 24 at $610,327. So the premiums that are paid into the self-funded health insurance fund by PPUB, that $550,000 in premiums that we pay, are then reimbursed back to the plant fund once those claims are paid by the trust. And so this is a huge benefit. We're saving the $550 that we're getting reimbursed back in premiums, and the plan itself is now paying for the claims. We do anticipate to be overfunded again in fiscal year 24, and so we won't be required to make any more additional plan contributions. So, any questions?
What do you think, Al?
I mean, here again, the fund is doing very well. That's what we wanted to report back to the board.
Yeah, and I think that was the purpose.
Yeah.
Based on what you explained, that we were kind of forced to switch over in a short period of time. We just wanted to make sure that you guys looked at the numbers after a certain amount of time and we're happy with the performance. And I think based on the results, everything looks pretty good.
Right.
No, and I think this is something that administration looked at a couple of years ago and then made this transition. Obviously, the performance is there. And Mike, I guess you guys, your office is working with this organization.
The
to
trust
keep track
administrator.
of it and-
Correct. We're scheduled to have a quarterly update within the next month. So
No, I think it's good. I think it's good. Any other comments on this item? All right, well, thank you for that, Mike. We'll move on to the sale of retired vehicles and equipment to the city of Brownsville.
Yeah, so I'll be presenting this item as well. So this is informational purposes again. As part of the annual budget process, we replace vehicles and equipment. Determination is based on the condition and repair history. When a new vehicle is received and placed in service, then the old unit is retired. Approximately once a year, we do conduct an auction, either in person or online, to sell these retired units. The city has previously expressed an interest in having first choice to acquire some of this equipment. So on September 17th, we emailed and sent a list of our retired units, a total of 48 units, to the city of Brownsville. On September 24th, they scheduled time to come in and do a walkthrough and view the units. On October 1, they responded back with a list of 16 units that they were interested in acquiring. Staff then researched the value of the units on multiple websites. And so here we've got the list of those 16 units that the city wishes to acquire. The fair market value came in at $162,078. At this time, we have not forwarded this information or schedule of values to the city of Brownsville. We're asking for the board to, I guess, provide guidance as to our steps forward.
I think it's a good thing that we're working with the city and they could use some of our assets that we no longer have in operation. I'm sure they're looking at them to be safe and for their own use at the city. So I recommend to administration that we move forward with this transfer and follow whatever process is required. Anything else? Barbara?
Do you need a motion?
Is this an item?
No,
or-
this is just a presentation,
just-
so we'll just
Just presentation.
follow your recommendation.
Mike, I don't see it on this list, there was one major item that PUB had purchased and that really wasn't used as an expensive item. Are you all still dealing with that item?
Yes, that item in question is the John Deere tractor that was used at the DLD sites at the port, the dedicated land disposal site that we had for our wastewater sludge at the port.
Right.
And since back in July in 2023, the port asked us to move out of that property. because they needed to access it and use it for their channel dredging operation. And so that's why we then, in August of 2023, started taking the sludge over to the landfill. But when we were taking it to this DLD site, we had purchased this this tractor along with the disc, you know, so they can disc out all the and let the waste just dry up at the DLD site. And so now that we're taking the sludge directly to the landfill, we no longer have a need for this tractor that had just been purchased. The total value, we paid approximately $477,000 and an additional $66,000 for the disc.
Is that asset still under PUB's management?
That one is it's still on the books. We don't have any use for it, and that's the only item that's still carrying a book value in our books. Every other the other units that are on the list are fully depreciated.
Will you all be working on a plan to?
Yes,
dispose of that?
we have the option to have a minimum reserve on the auction, and that could represent our book value. And so if the tractor doesn't sell at that value, then above that value, right, it just doesn't sell. So we're not going to take pennies on a dollar. But at that point, then we need to figure out if there's some company out there that can maybe sell it for us on consignment or is willing to purchase it back. John Deere, we did reach out to them, and they no longer sell on consignment. So.
Well, I appreciate that information. Anything else on this topic?
No, just that I think it's a good idea to work with the city, and especially if there's no book value. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Mike. Y'all keep up.
Are you all okay if we then, I guess, are we going to be requesting the fair market value for this equipment, or do you all?
From the city?
Yes. Like I mentioned, the fair market value that was obtained from our staff was at $162,000.
My own personal comments about items that were purchased by ratepayers from PUB that we now have and we were thinking of transferring to the city. City's our partner. We no longer use them. They have a value. I would prefer that they be transferred to the city without us receiving any compensation from the city. Now, other people may not feel the same, but there are assets. They're out of operation. The city can use them. We're taking money from ratepayers, and then we're taking money from taxpayers. Those are my comments. Anything else from anyone else? Should we sell those items to the city, or should we?
I think, I mean, I can sell them for the values you have here. If you're giving them the first option, they can kind of cherry pick what they want. And all they're asking is for the right of first refusal, right, basically?
Correct.
They're not asking for anything more, are they?
No.
Yeah, so I think we comply with their request and sell at a fair market value.
I agree.
That's my opinion.
Sometimes there are different, like, fair market estimates. So I would say this is open to negotiation. This is a good starting point, and negotiate from there as appropriate.
But negotiate what? I mean, that fair market value, I think it's something fair that, you know, would be paid.
Yeah, if you look at these prices, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
fair market
$3,000,
value
yeah,
is very
for
reasonable.
a $10,000 vehicle.
They do update and change daily, so we can always revisit and
Yeah, I just feel that way because we're getting close to the holidays. But, you know, if the majority of the board wishes to transfer these for the fair market value, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And I know the state of Texas has a lot of vehicles, Department of Public Safety sells to small law enforcement agencies throughout the state. I'm not sure if they sell them or if they donate them, but now let's move forward on this, Mike.
Oh, I would like to say that I do agree with you. I think it would be better to, you know, if there is anything that they want from here, I don't see a problem in, I mean, this does not go against the bond ordinance, right? This is not, you know, a service that we're providing. So it is it is possible to just let them have it. And it would be doing us a favor as well. And
You know, how about, Mark, if you guys can work on this, and bring it back to a meeting as an action item, and that way the board can,
We will, we'll bring them back and you can declare them surplus at that time and we'll talk with the city.
and then this board can make a decision, the majority of the board, whether we want to sell it at a fair market or donate it, and perhaps create some goodwill. But we'll just deal with it as a board. The majority, will have an action item and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
Okay. The last item we have on the items for individual consideration is the drought update with Mr. Mariscal.
Yeah, good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Rene Mariscal, Division Manager for Water Resources, Conservation and Compliance. Quick update, drought update. As of November 2nd, 2024, the U.S. combined storage is at 20.5. You should have, by the way, the latest printed. Okay. These are updated weekly, so at times we'll have to get them to you printed. 20.5, we still remain at in stage 2. The level here is down from 20.9 last year at this same time, so it's slightly lower. Amistad as of this publication was at 20.85%. Falcon was at 12.03%, and Mexico is at 11.96% of normal conservation capacity. The trend if you look to the left over the month of October, fairly steady. I mean, quite frankly, it's been fairly steady for the last several months. The lowest was in June of 18.1. So if you take a look at this year's compared to last year's, looks like we're essentially coming fairly even to same levels this time last year. National Weather Service, really the outlook from November to January, much of the same of what it was last month. Falcon and Amistad still remain at historic lows, and we anticipate that at least through the end of October. Warmer and drier than average conditions likely through the fall. Confidence is near on total storage remaining at or near record lows. There's still not a lot of inflows anticipated from the Mexican distributaries, and likely to remain in stage 2 at least for the immediate future. As Mark indicated, hopefully this minute 331, provides some relief here in the near future as well. Any questions?
Well, I mean, it's getting a little bit, there's some slight improvement. But no, any comments or questions from, I'm trying to be optimistic, that's the water. Any comments or any, about the
No, just
presentation?
thank you for the update.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Renee. We have one last item, it's an action item on policy. Mike, you have this one?
Yes, sir. So let me go ahead and read the subject. This is a consideration and possible action on the utility financial reserve policy. So we've been working on this for a couple of months. So we developed this policy. In order to maintain stable rates and provide reliable service, BPB must maintain appropriate financial reserves that can absorb short-term financial variability resulting from unexpected operating results, or can reduce the need for debt issuances. This policy will ensure that BPB maintains adequate reserve levels for the purpose of providing sufficient cash flow for daily operations. Without these reserves, any unforeseen emergency expenditures can deplete BPB's operating funds, thus hindering BPB's ability to pay its ongoing daily operations. This reserve policy is looked upon favorably by the rating agencies and can have a positive effect on BPB's bond rating. There were a total of 6 different reserves that were identified, 4 of which are required by bond covenants, and those are the 4 that are listed on here. The operating reserve, this is to meet the day-to-day maintenance and operating expenses. It's supposed to be set at a minimum of 60 days of budgeted O&M expenses. Based on the fiscal year 23 audited numbers, the minimum required will be about $15.1 million. And as you can see, we've got a little over $17 million in the account. Second, we've got the senior lien reserve. This is for the payment of the senior lien obligations. And it needs to be the list of 100% of the maximum annual debt service, 125% of the average annual debt service, or 10% of the initial principal amount of the outstanding debt. And in this case, the minimum was the 125% of the average annual debt service at $17,191,539. This one we do fund on a combination of cash of $15.8 million and surety policies that are in place that were set in place back with the 2005A bond issuance and the 2008 issuances. And so it is way in excess of the $17 million that's required. Third, we've got the junior lien reserve for the payment of the junior lien obligations. It's supposed to be set at 100% of the average annual debt service, which is $112,057. We are above that as of 9/30/24. And then the capital reserve to meet capital project funding requirements with a minimum of $15 million. We've got a little over $15 million at the end of the year. These are the two new reserves that were proposed. The first one is the decommissioning reserve. This is to provide funding for decommissioning BPUB's interest in power generation plants. If you all recall, the board did approve $2 million to be funded into this reserve in fiscal year 2025. Our target levels are between $10 and $15 million. The initial funding will come from the net revenues of the system, and we anticipate or intend to fund this within 5 years, so $2 million per year. Second was the power supply stabilization reserve. This is to mitigate fluctuations in the net power supply cost. Funding is within 90 to 120 days of the net power supply cost, and based on the fiscal year 25 power supply cost of about $88 million. Our target level is between $22 million and $29.3 million. Again, the initial funding comes from the net revenues of the system. We intend to fund this within 10 years. Funds spent from this account are then replenished from the fuel purchase and energy charge collections. So if approved, we do plan to bring back a budget amendment to the board in December so that we can start funding this power supply stabilization reserve at a tune of about $2.2 million in fiscal year 25. And so we can anticipate fully funding this within 10 years. Now, the draft policy has been reviewed by executive staff, our financial advisor, bond counsel. It was also presented to the Regulatory and Policy Committee on October 30th and the Finance Committee on November the 7th. All those edits from these individuals have been incorporated into the plan or into the policy document. These changes include some additional language for the definition of the capital reserve, a change to funding requirement calculations for the operating reserve. We added some language for the temporary suspension of contributions into the reserves. We also added language to and the replenishment timeframe for the senior and junior lien reserves. And then we did change the funding requirement for the power supply stabilization reserve to 10 years. Initially, the policy had identified 5 years, but that's too short of a period. So that's pretty much it. Any questions on the board?
Any questions on this? I noticed it was already vetted through the Finance Committee and was recommended.
And the policy.
Okay, so we have a recommendation from administration.
Yes, the recommendation is the Regulatory and Policy Committee and Finance Committee recommended the approval of the Utility Financial Reserve Policy.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Dr. Sabota makes a motion to approve. Second?
I second that.
Second by Mr. Nahad. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those against, this motion
Thank you.
passes. This item passes unanimously. Thank you, Mike.
Yep. Thank you, Mike. It was great to see all the changes there, and it looks pretty good.
Yeah, good stuff. That's the last item we have for individual consideration. Before we go into closed meeting, let me read the following, please. We're going to recess the closed meeting to consider matters pursuant to Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Meeting with board legal counsel for advice about contemplated impending court and administrative litigation and on matters of which the duty of the attorney under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct conflicts with Chapter 551, Section 551.071, including but not limited to the following: reports of local and special counsel, update on pending negotiations of non-standard contracts related to potential business development, updates on pending discussion with the City of Brownsville on coordination issues, including PTX, lit, and compensation for services, and legal issues related to system improvement issues. Presentation and discussion and possible recommendation of information upon pricing of purchase power generation and fuel and their impact upon the fuel purchase energy and marketing charge, section 551.086. So do I have a motion, so we can move into closed session, please?
A motion to move into closed session?
Mr. Martinez has a motion, a second.
I'll second that.
A second by Mr. Varela. All those in favor of moving to closed session, say aye.
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 Those against? At this time, we'll be moving into closed session. Thank you.
The time is 6:05.
6:05. All right. Okay, we are back from executive. It is 7:15. Consideration action on closed meeting items. We do not have any items that we will be taking action on.
No items. Mr. Chair, just for the minute, for the minutes, Dr. Holman left the meeting, closed meeting at 6:39 PM, so that the minutes can be noted.
Okay, let the record reflect that. There will be no items for action. Consideration action on future agenda items, discussion and/or request for future agenda items. Anything from any of the board members or administration? Mark, I would just like to mention one thing. If you can talk to Marilyn about at the next meeting, giving us maybe a 10-minute presentation on transmission. There seems to be two major issues. Water, we wanted to create more water through our water system, and then transmission. If we could learn a little more about that.
We will. December 9th, we have that on slated.
Okay. Anything, Mr. Martinez, did you have something?
Not at this time.
Okay, then at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn by
Second?
Ms. Second by Mr. Martinez. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those against. This meeting is adjourned, 7:16. Thank you.